Anime, am I actually the strongest? In this first episode, we are introduced to a man who has isolated himself in his house for 5 years since junior high school. He did this to avoid bullying. One day, his phone shines brightly, and when he regains consciousness, he is greeted by a goddess. The goddess tells him that he has been chosen to be reincarnated. He will live in a world full of magic. Because of that, the goddess gives him cheats so that his life won't be difficult. The man agrees to be reincarnated. He wants to live a peaceful life. To relax all day without thinking about anything and live lazily, then suddenly fall asleep. When he wakes up in the other world, he realizes that he is in the body of a newborn baby. He still retains memories from his previous life. His father is a king of a kingdom, and his mother, known as the Lightning Princess, once defeated the Demon King. The baby has the mark of the king on his left chest. They are very proud of their child. After that, they want to measure the baby's magical energy. The king has high expectations because the child is the offspring of the Lightning Princess. A number appears on the magic measuring crystal, and they are shocked because the baby's magical energy is only level 2. Furthermore, the baby doesn't have any attributes and can only master defensive magic. Both parents are worried that their reputation will be ruined when the people find out about their child's existence. They decide to spread a rumor that the newborn Prince Reinhardt was actually born stillborn. The king orders his servants to throw Reinhardt deep into the forest. The goddess who reincarnated him panics when she sees this. She forgot that the magic energy measuring device in that world can only display up to 2 digits. Moreover, she forgot to add attributes to him. In fact, the goddess had given him a cheat so that his magical energy level was 1002. Reinhardt is currently alone in the forest. He cannot move freely because he is still a baby. He wants to try magic since he was told earlier that he could use defensive magic. He imagines it and easily creates a cube-shaped shield. He can enlarge and change the color of the shield. It seems like he can create anything just by imagining it. After trying it, he realizes that his defensive magic can be used on himself. Reinhardt appears as if he is floating, even though there is a shield carrying him. Soon, a giant red fox ambushes Reinhardt. Luckily, his shield is sturdy enough to withstand the fox's bite. He creates many small shields to attack the fox. However, his attacks have little effect. Then, he comes up with the idea of lifting the trees around him with his shield. Finally, his attacks have an impact on the fox. Unfortunately, that was still not enough to defeat it. Reinhardt decided to fly the large trees along with the earth beneath them. When the fox saw this, it suddenly spoke and said that it wanted to surrender. Reinhardt thought that the voice was just his imagination. The fox pleaded once again to surrender. Reinhardt finally realized that the voice was coming from the fox. He stopped his attack. The fox then explained that it wanted to eat Reinhardt to restore its magical energy. It never expected that a baby could be this strong. Reinhardt wanted to say something, but he couldn't form coherent sentences because he was still a baby. He had the idea to create a shield that could transform his thoughts into words. He attached the shield to his throat. And indeed, he could now speak normally. Feeling that his name was too long and difficult to pronounce, he introduced himself as Hart. He explained that he was abandoned after birth because his magical energy was too low. The fox couldn't believe that he was discarded just like that. After all, the fox sensed magical energy within Hart that surpassed that of humans. The fox suspected that Hart was the reincarnation of the Demon King. Hart admitted this because he didn't want to be seen as a loser. Moreover, he used to be an unemployed shut-in. The fox immediately believed him. The fox offered itself to be killed because it had lost the fight. Hart felt uncomfortable with the idea of killing it. He forgave the fox as long as it wouldn't attack him again in the future. The fox vowed to keep that promise in the name of the Flame Fenrir race. Finding the name of the race cumbersome, Hart called the fox Flay. Hart asked for permission to leave now that their problem was resolved. However, Flay didn't want to say goodbye first. Hart had saved it and even given it a new name. When that happened, a contract was formed. Therefore, it was only fitting for a servant to dedicate itself to its master. While Flay was still talking, Hart suddenly felt weak and couldn't fly with his shield anymore. It seemed that this problem wouldn't be solved with magic alone. Indeed, Hart needed breast milk. For the sake of his master, Flay would do its best. It began to transform into a human. However, Flay still couldn't produce breast milk. It needed to go through the reproductive process first. They were still helpless and couldn't do anything. At that moment, Flay sensed someone approaching. Heart commanded Flay to check on the person, and Heart created a shield that allowed them to communicate privately over a distance. When asked, the man who came said that he wanted to pick up the baby behind Flay. Flay immediately refused. It didn't want to hand over Heart, who had just become its master. However, the man said that the baby was his relative. He knew that the baby was abandoned for a reason, so he came to save it. Furthermore, Heart looked hungry. The man had brought breast milk in a bag for the baby. Heart asked Flay to retrieve the breast milk. However, Flay insisted on maintaining its dignity by taking care of Heart alone. The man revealed that he couldn't bear to see a young child in distress. When his ex-wife was pregnant, their baby didn't cry when it was born. That's why he wanted Heart to continue living after birth. The man then persuaded Flay with a deal. If Flay wanted Heart to be its master, Flay had to work as the man's servant. After hearing the story and agreement from the man, Flay finally agreed. Then, the man destroyed Heart's baby basket and replaced the cloth that Heart was wrapped in. This was done to create camouflage. 9 years have passed, and now Heart is accustomed to living with his new family. The man who picked him up turned out to be a count named Gordo. Gordo has a daughter from his new wife. Her name is Charlotte, commonly known as Char, a young blonde girl. It seems that Char is not very fond of interacting with Heart. On the other hand, Char seems to be very fond of Flay. However, Flay still prioritizes Heart as its servant. In fact, Flay will only play with Char if ordered by Heart first. While the two of them play, Heart watches from a distance. Then, his stepmother, Natalia, approaches him. She knows that Heart is thinking about his relationship with Char. However, according to Natalia, Char avoids Heart because she doesn't know how to behave around someone of the opposite sex who is the same age. That's why Char can be very close to Flay, who is the same gender. Natalia suggests that Heart do something to make Char happy. Perhaps Char's perception will change if Heart shows his role as an older brother. Despite being asked to do so, Heart was just an unemployed person with communication problems. He felt incapable of undertaking such a difficult task. Afterward, Heart was contemplating his life plan while lying on the bed. Actually, Heart wanted to live independently. However, Flay would surely continue to follow him. Plus, Char might grow to hate him even more. On the other hand, if he continued to live in this residence, Heart would have to do many things. By the way, Heart can now create clones of himself using defensive magic. During these 9 years, he has conducted extensive research on defensive magic. Unfortunately, his clones still cannot speak or move. While still pondering his life issues, Gordo knocks on his door. He invites Heart to teach him sword techniques. Since Heart's magic level is very low, Gordo wants to develop Heart's skills in other areas. They begin training with a wooden sword. In his lifetime, Gordo was known as the Earth Crusher Hammer, a formidable warrior. Since Heart didn't want to feel pain, he covered his body with defensive magic. Heart immediately leaps and swings his sword. Although Gordo can dodge it, he seems surprised by the attack. Moreover, Heart's wooden sword breaks when it touches the ground. Now it's Gordo's turn to attack. As the sword is about to hit him, Heart manages to dodge perfectly by leaping high into the air. In fact, that attack could only be avoided if someone had magic energy at level 30 or higher. Since then, Heart has always been amazed by his abilities. In the past, he even created his own magic level measuring crystal that could measure up to 3 digits. He suspected that maybe his magic level reached 3 digits, but when measured, the result remained the same, 002. Heart immediately gave up when he saw the result. Besides, it was said that the highest magic level in human history was 77. So, Heart felt it was pointless to test it to 4 digits. In his opinion, the cheat he received from the goddess was the ability to use defensive magic with high efficiency. Meanwhile, Char watches Heart's sword training from a distance. In the evening, Gordo tells Natalia about the earlier incident. Char is sleeping on her mother's lap. According to Gordo's opinion, Heart is a newly awakened demon race. Based on the family's secret information, someone in the past had a connection with creatures from the demon race. There is a possibility that Heart was born with those characteristics. It is true that Heart doesn't have horns and a tail, but the royal symbol he possesses remains a mystery. In fact, even Flay, who is a demon race, idolizes Heart. However, Natalia cannot bear to think of Heart as a demon race. Gordo also still considers Heart as a human. He wants to bring happiness to their children. Meanwhile, Flay has been listening to their conversation. It also objects to the idea that its older sibling is a demon race. This is the end of episode 1. Continuing to episode 2, Heart was relaxing on his bed. Lately, Gordo seemed busy, so he didn't need to practice sword techniques. Suddenly, Heart heard a commotion outside. He tried to see the situation outside using his protective magic projection. Near the fortress gate, many of his father's soldiers were severely injured. Gordo himself was fine but felt very frustrated. Heart went there and met his father. Gordo said he had been busy lately because there had been frequent bandit attacks in the area. After obtaining the information, Gordo and his troops headed to the bandits' headquarters. However, their troops were suddenly attacked from behind. Despite being alert and fully prepared, they were taken by surprise. Heart's face turned angry upon hearing Gordo's story. Flay was also there, mocking the soldiers for losing to lowly bandits. Heart immediately told her to be quiet, and Flay backed off. While walking towards his residence, Heart secretly predicted protective magic that could heal wounds. The soldiers were puzzled as to why their injuries healed on their own. That night, Heart was already asleep in his bed, and for some reason, Flay was still standing in front of his room door. When Heart woke up and wanted to leave the room, he was surprised to see Flay there. Even when asked, Flay didn't say anything. Heart remembered that earlier he had ordered Flay to stay quiet because he was angry. Perhaps that's why Flay was acting this way. Heart felt guilty and allowed Flay to speak again. After that, Heart wanted to go out tonight, and he asked Flay to accompany him. Heart used his projection to search for the bandits who attacked his father's soldiers. Heart found a group of bandits, but among them, he saw some soldiers as well. Heart and Flay suspected that the enemy had information about Gordo's troops. In other words, they had spies. Without much thought, Heart decided to eliminate them completely. From inside the residence, Heart and Flay were unaware that Char was looking out the window. Meanwhile, at the bandits' headquarters, it turned out there were indeed some soldiers who had betrayed their own side. They were pleased to see Gordo running away from the battle. Their next plan was to eliminate Gordo. Unbeknownst to them, Heart and Flay overheard their conversation. They panicked because there was a sudden intruder. As they tried to draw their weapons, Heart immobilized them with his protective magic. Heart intended to interrogate them, and it seemed they had no other choice after witnessing his terrifying face and abilities. Heart obtained some interesting information. The bandits who attacked were actually Imperial soldiers from a neighboring country in disguise. They infiltrated the kingdom to create chaos. They claimed to have an accomplice who helped them overcome the border security. However, they themselves didn't know much about this accomplice. Heart was surprised because such a thing could only be done with authority surpassing that of Gordo. It could be that someone in this kingdom was targeting Gordo's life. After answering Heart's questions, the spies pleaded for forgiveness and promised not to be involved in this matter again. However, Heart instructed Flay to burn down their entire headquarters instead. And so, the fortress they used as their base turned into a sea of fire. For now, Heart planned to inform Gordo about this information through an anonymous letter. The next day, Gordo received the anonymous letter. Gordo's troops confirmed that the mentioned fortress had been completely burned down, and they also managed to capture some bandits at the location. Initially, Gordo suspected that they were not ordinary bandits, but he didn't expect them to be involved with the Empire. Char was also with Gordo and heard all the news. Char asked who had exterminated those wicked people. It was not certain, but considering the skill and brutality displayed, only one person came to mind when it came to discussing powerful fire magic. Who else but Flay? Gordo even admitted that Flay had abilities surpassing his own. Sometimes, Flay also patrolled to control the demon race in this area. Gordo speculated that Flay coincidentally encountered the bandits while on patrol. Char immediately remembered something and asked for permission to leave. Char wanted to find out more about her sibling. She went straight to Flay to inquire. She wanted to know if there were two of her siblings. Char recounted that last night she saw shadows that looked like Hart and Flay flying in the middle of the night. However, Char was certain that her sibling couldn't use flying magic. Therefore, Char decided to go to her sibling's room to make sure. There, she found her sibling sleeping, but Char didn't sense the usual frightening aura. Flay instantly felt proud of her master's power. She explained that the intimidating aura was evidence of Hart's extraordinary magical strength. Since infancy, his power had been incredibly formidable. Even as a demon, Flay couldn't reach that level. Char then asked about Hart's true identity. However, Flay didn't want to tell her. Although when Hart once claimed to be the Demon King, he was just speaking casually at that time. In the afternoon, Flay told Hart about her conversation with Char. They spoke telepathically using protective magic to avoid being overheard by others. Hart decided to create a surveillance spell. He also set it up to emit a warning sound whenever Char was in a certain location or engaged in something dangerous. At night, Hart intentionally left his room to lure Char. He pretended to go to the bathroom. Char followed Hart from behind at a not too distant distance. Then, Hart gathered his courage to turn around and ask her something. Char immediately ran and hid again. Even while bathing, Hart didn't suspect that his sister was secretly spying on him, although in reality, Char was clearly visible. The following day was the same. Char continued to follow and observe Hart from behind. Even when he practiced swordsmanship, read books, bathed with Gordo, and during all his other activities. This went on for 7 days. Then, during a family meal, Gordo informed them that Natalia and Char would be going out. They were going to attend an annual festival. Usually, Gordo would accompany them, but this time he asked the two of them to go instead. Meanwhile, Char continued to gaze at Hart. In the afternoon, Hart received a warning sound from the surveillance spell he had placed on Char. In the forest, Natalia and Char were ambushed by a group of bandits. The guards were overwhelmed trying to fend off the bandits. Natalia managed to find an opportunity to escape. She carried Char with her. Suddenly, a protective magic appeared in Char's ear, indicating the direction to flee. Natalia herself was puzzled about how someone could give instructions to Char. Natalia reached the edge of a cliff, and Char said there was a hiding place below. Reluctantly, Natalia had to jump down to avoid being captured by the bandits. Fortunately, Natalia used her magic to minimize the impact of the fall. They finally arrived in a dark cave. Natalia said she wanted to meet the person who had given Char instructions. Although she didn't know the person's identity, Natalia believed they were a defender of truth. Char asked what a defender of truth was. Natalia explained that this figure was someone who punished criminals. Natalia intended to go outside and told Char to stay there. As she left, the mouth of the hiding place suddenly vanished and turned into a stone. However, she could still pass through the stone. It seemed to be an illusion spell. Unaware that the bandits had managed to find her, Natalia was not going to allow herself to become their captive. She unsheathed the knife she had and aimed it at her own throat. She felt it was better to die than to be a prisoner. Suddenly, the knife Natalia held shattered into pieces. It was actually Hart's doing. He also made Natalia temporarily unconscious to prevent her from being discovered. Witnessing all of this, Hart became incredibly angry. He unleashed his wrath upon all the bandits in front of him. After successfully securing their mother, Hart brought her inside the cave. He altered his voice to sound like someone else, but Char couldn't be fooled. She felt the intimidating aura emanating from him, similar to Hart's aura. Char gathered the courage to turn around and call out to her brother. Surprisingly, Hart spontaneously responded when she called out to him. Char asked if he was the defender of truth who punished evil people. Hart didn't know how to answer, so he went along with it for now. He confessed that he was indeed a defender of truth. Char became excited upon hearing this and felt guilty for misunderstanding her brother all this time. Hart only asked her to keep it a secret for now. After that, Hart bid farewell and went outside to take care of the remaining enemies. Later that night, Hart returned home early and instructed Flay to pick up Natalia and Char, so they wouldn't suspect that he was the one who saved them. Gordo's subordinates also reported that the injured guards miraculously healed themselves. Just like the other day, Gordo wanted to express his gratitude to the person who helped him, but he had no idea about their identity. Hart mentioned that the person would surely come again when the Imperial soldiers disguised as bandits returned. Gordo immediately asked how Hart knew that the bandits were actually Imperial soldiers. Hart made up a reason. saying that it was the most likely scenario if they were targeting Natalia and Char. A while later, Flay returned with Natalia and Char. Unexpectedly, Char suddenly hugged Hart with joy. Gordo and Natalia were also surprised to see them becoming close all of a sudden. Char simply stated that she had fallen in love with her brother. Flay felt jealous seeing someone else getting close to Hart. This is the end of episode 2. Continuing to episode 3, Char casually entered Hart's room and invited him to play. Hart asked her to knock on the door next time she wanted to come in. Char happily agreed and hugged her older brother. Since that day, Charlotte played in Hart's room every day. Hart didn't mind at all. In fact, he felt comforted by being able to caress Char, who was like a small animal. Char was curious about the visible projection in Hart's room. Hart explained that it was magic for surveillance. Char immediately referred to it as ancient magic because a while ago Hart mentioned that he was researching ancient magic in his room. Hart pretended to say that this magic was a bit troublesome because there was no documentation on ancient magic. However, to his surprise, Char said that there was actually documentation. She had seen it in the castle library. When they arrived at the library, Hart was very impressed with the number of books there, especially since it was his first time coming here. After that, Char fetched a book about ancient magic that she had seen. In one of the books, it was explained that ancient magic was non-elemental magic. Modern magic complements it by adding 4 elements. Hart suspected that perhaps his protective magic had similarities to ancient magic. Although there were many explanations about ancient magic, according to Char, this book was the most interesting among all. Hart didn't expect that Char had read this book, even though there were many difficult vocabulary words in it. Apparently, she read it with the help of her mother and Flay. Suddenly, Char sat on Hart's lap. She said that her mother and Flay also held her while reading the book. When reading the book more deeply, she felt that the development of the story was similar to an anime. Char became curious about the anime that her brother mentioned. Hart found it difficult to explain all the details, but in essence, anime is a moving picture, even with sound. Thanks to Hart's explanation, Char became interested in anime and wanted to watch it too. Honestly, Hart also wanted to see it, but he didn't know how. However, when he saw Char so excited, he tried to find a way for them to watch anime. 2 weeks later, the plan succeeded. The explanation was too complicated, but the important thing was that Hart could now access modern Japanese internet connection. Even the streaming subscription he bought before was still active. Hart just needed to create a special account for children so that Char could watch. After that, Char looked at the list of available anime and immediately became interested in an anime titled Emotional. From the thumbnail, the anime depicted a cute magical girl. As the anime played, Char was truly captivated by the moving and sound-filled images. However, Char encountered one problem. She couldn't understand the character's speech. Well, it was understandable because it was in Japanese. Char pleaded to be taught the Japanese language. Hart felt that it would be difficult, but he believed that Char had good absorption abilities since she was only 5 years old. And indeed, Char quickly mastered hiragana and katakana within 2 hours. She even started learning kanji for elementary school level and typed them into the search engine. 2 weeks later, as usual, Char entered Hart's room. This time, she wanted to watch the continuation of Tama-zan. Char loved the story. The zombies were taking over Saitama City, and the justice heroes would protect the citizens. For the past 2 weeks, Char had been learning Japanese from anime and had grasped the basics. It was truly amazing, but Hart couldn't let her sister watch anime all the time. Just when Char wanted to watch the next episode, Hart advised her that binge-watching an entire season was not good. From now on, Hart limited Char to only watch 3 hours a day. Char was naturally disappointed. Despite that, Hart had to remain firm. He then invited Char to go out for dinner. During dinner, Char appeared sleepy and didn't eat her food at all. Gordo became curious because lately Char had been spending a lot of time with Hart. Char suddenly snapped out of her drowsiness and answered that they were studying ancient magic. After finishing dinner, Char continued to follow Hart, hoping to be allowed to watch anime. However, Hart still didn't give in and told her to take a bath and go to bed immediately. While Hart was taking a bath, Char actually entered the bathing area as well. Since she couldn't watch anime, Char had no choice but to go to sleep. By the way, Char had already told her mother that she would be taking a bath with her brother. Hart didn't mind because Char was still a young child, but deep down, he still felt like a criminal. Somehow, Char kept staring at Hart's body. It turned out she was curious about the mark on Hart's left chest. Char believed that it was the symbol of a justice hero. Heart simply pretended to confirm her statement, attributing it to her excessive anime watching. Afterward, they went to sleep and separated from each other. Despite the separation, Char suddenly ended up sleeping next to Heart. It seemed that Natalia had escorted Char as per her request, and she was even peeking from outside. She said her dream would come true by witnessing the closeness between Heart and Char. The next day, Gordo and his troops were about to go out to eliminate the bandits. Char appeared worried seeing her father's departure. She still seemed concerned when in Heart's room. However, Heart assured her that her father would be fine because these bandits were just ordinary ones. Lately, many ordinary people had turned into bandits due to power struggles within the country. Char wondered if there was no way for everyone to live happily. Heart explained that it was very difficult, even though everyone wished for it. Char then asked if her brother couldn't solve this problem. According to Char, Heart's power existed to handle such matters. It was unclear from which anime Char learned that sentence. Heart couldn't bear to see his little sister pleading with such adorable and pitiful eyes. It didn't stop there. Char wanted to see Heart transform before fighting. Reluctantly, Heart complied with her request. He posed as he did in the anime and changed his appearance. Heart wore all black clothing, with a cloak and helmet to conceal his identity. He also modified his voice so that he wouldn't be recognized by others. After that, Heart created a projection so that Char could watch him in action. Moreover, Heart couldn't take Char directly to the scene. After some time, Heart finally found the bandits. He blocked off the cave where they were hiding with protective magic. Upon arriving, Heart released his protective magic. Although embarrassed, Heart posed first before disposing of the bandits. When he had defeated all of them, Gordo and his troops arrived. Gordo asked who the person was that had defeated the bandits. Heart was puzzled about how to respond and accidentally blurted out Madani, still no one. Gordo then asked if this Madani was the one who had saved his wife and child. Heart pretended not to remember the incident, but his goal was clear, to uphold justice. Of course, Heart felt extremely embarrassed when he said it. He immediately flew away from them. When he arrived back in his room, Heart felt like he wanted to die from embarrassment. Because Char wanted to see Heart's actions again, he eventually gave in and continued to do it repeatedly. In fact, he now earned the nickname Black Knight. A few days later, Heart appeared very happy in his room. It turns out he had successfully perfected his clone. Since he was shown references to ancient magic, Heart had been trying to perfect his clone using that information. The clone resembled him so much that Heart himself felt annoyed. With this, his desire to seclude himself in his room was finally realized. Unbeknownst to Heart, Char had actually slept in his room overnight. And when Char woke up, she was clearly confused to see two of her brother. When Flay asked Heart to come out and greet the guests, Heart instructed his clone to go instead. However, because their personalities were too similar, the clone was also too lazy to leave. The guests who came to their residence were Princess Marianne and Prince Lias. They claimed to be heirs to the throne, which possibly made them Heart's siblings. Nevertheless, Prince Lias had a haughty demeanor. Princess Marianne continued to apologize for Lias' behavior. Heart himself was also surprised by his actions. Lias noticed that Heart was glaring at him. He had heard rumors that Heart was a level 2 child adopted from an orphanage. Lias challenged Heart to a duel to teach him proper etiquette towards the royal family. The duel was actually carried out. Since Lias seemed very confident, Heart wanted to see his level. Lias' current level was 9 and could reach a maximum level of 40. At the same time, he also wanted to see Gordo and Marianne's levels. Gordo had reached level 32, while Marianne was at level 14 and could reach a maximum level of 33. When Lias swung his sword, Heart easily dodged it. However, Lias protested because he couldn't discipline Heart if he kept dodging. Heart followed the course of the game. He covered his body with protective magic and pretended to be in pain when attacked. Lias felt superior and pretended to tell Heart to counterattack. Since he was allowed, Heart quickly moved behind Lias and knocked him down. Marianne, who witnessed it, couldn't believe that Heart was only level 2. Gordo himself didn't know. Even Heart himself said he didn't know how it was possible. Unable to accept it, Lias cast a fireball towards Heart. However, Heart was able to handle it with his protective magic. From the perspective of others, it appeared as though Lias' magic was absorbed by something. Lias tried to cast it again multiple times, but the result remained the same. Afterward, Heart showed all the absorbed flames forming a tremendous blaze. Lias immediately gave up upon seeing it. Then, Marianne apologized for her brother's behavior. She also wanted to confirm if Hart was truly level 2. She just found out that the rumors about him being level 2 had spread throughout the town. She suspected that their biological parents were investigating him. However, Hart didn't believe they were the ones behind it. Besides, his parents had discarded him so easily. This is the end of episode 3. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss part 4 of this series recap.